Welcome after the break. Now for the news in detail. US President Donald Trump has called off peace talks with the Taliban over an attack in Afghanistan that killed an American soldier. It said the Taliban do not have the power to negotiate a meaningful peace deal if they cannot agree to a ceasefire. The US president said he has cancelled meetings with major Taliban leaders and the Afghan president at Camp David today. He said the Taliban tried to build leverage before the meeting by admitting to an attack that killed 11, including an American. While the Taliban say the decision to cancel peace talks will lead to further loss of American lives and assets. Meanwhile, the Afghan government urged the Taliban to end violence and hold direct talks.
And we observe that there could be risks to any process that the Afghan government is not the main stakeholder in that. And any process that cannot guarantee a ceasefire, a halt to the violence, could be harmful for all of the achievements that we've gained.
Earlier this week, the Taliban and US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad agreed on a draft peace agreement. Moving on, in occupied Kashmir, Indian troops have wounded several mourners during a Muharram procession in Srinagar. 3 journalists were also wounded when the occupying forces fired pellets, canes and tear gas shells at the procession. India has barred Kashmiris from performing their religious obligations and observing Ashura. In the Islamic month of Muharram, Muslims commemorate the sacrifices of Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him's grandson, Imam Hussain. A large number of troops have been deployed at the commercial hub of Lal Chowk. Adjoining areas have been completely sealed off. Meanwhile, Pakistan has rejected India's false portrayal of normalcy in occupied Kashmir. Pakistan's Foreign Office said India is distorting the truth using its communications blackout to promote its own narrative. The occupied valley continues to reel under a curfew and communications blackout for the 35th consecutive day. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Beijing will support Pakistan in safeguarding its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meeting in Islamabad, Pakistan's Prime Minister and China's Foreign Minister agreed to maintain frequent diplomatic meetings. Speaking about Kashmir, Wang said the issue must be resolved on the basis of UN Charter and bilateral agreements. Pakistan's Foreign Ministry says the two sides have committed to close cooperation to deepen strategic coordination. Both countries have agreed that a peaceful, stable and prosperous South Asia is in the common interest of all parties. The UK's Labour Party says it will not back general elections unless Prime Minister abides by a law blocking a no-deal Brexit. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn called for a statement by Prime Minister Boris Johnson accepting the Act of Parliament. The British Parliament approved a law compelling the Prime Minister to delay Brexit further. Corbyn said lawmakers are preparing legal action in case Johnson tries to defy legislation.
They are preparing for chaos. The better thing they could do is actually make sure he abides by the decision of Parliament, which has passed a new act in order to prevent a crashing out on the 31st of October and extend for 3 months in order that there can be sensible negotiations with the EU. Any sensible Prime Minister would do that.
Britain's Work and Pensions Secretary Amber Rudd has resigned from the government and the ruling Conservative Party. She says she could not stand by while loyal party members were expelled. She also said no longer believed that leaving the EU with a deal was the government's main objective. She described the sacking of 21 Tory MPs as an assault on decency and democracy. Her resignation follows a week of setbacks for the government. A cross-party group of MPs seized control of the parliamentary agenda, passing legislation blocking a no-deal Brexit. The rebel MPs were ousted from the party after failing to vote with Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Meanwhile, ex-Labour MP Angela Smith has joined the Liberal Democrats, calling them the strongest party to stop Brexit. Meanwhile, Israeli warplanes have carried out airstrikes in Gaza. There are no reports of casualties yet. Palestinian media reports the Nusayrat refugee camp, Beirut refugee camp and the town of Beit Lahia, south of Gaza, were hit. Israel claims the locations belong to the Hamas movement's armed wing. The Israeli army spokesman said the airstrike was a response to an earlier attack by a homemade drone in southern Israel. He said severe damage was caused to the two facilities targeted by air-to-ground missiles. The United States and Turkey have begun joint patrols in northeastern Syria. The safe zone patrols are a bid to ease tensions between Ankara and US-backed Kurdish forces. Witnesses say 6 Turkish armored vehicles crossed the border near Tel Abyad to join US troops in Syria for their first joint patrol. They said 2 helicopters flew over the area as the vehicles drove over Syrian border. Meanwhile, Syrian Foreign Ministry condemned the joint patrol, saying it is a violation of the country's sovereignty. The agreement reached on August 7th aims to establish a safe zone between the Turkish border and Syrian territory east of the Euphrates River. President Tayyip Erdogan had threatened to launch an operation against the YPG in Syria if it was delayed further. Washington and Ankara recently established a joint center of operations as part of the agreement. Now, Iran says the European parties of the 2015 nuclear deal have failed to fulfill their commitments under the pact. Iran's nuclear chief Ali Dakar Salahi said the deal is not a one-way street and Iran will act accordingly. Meeting Colonel Feruta, the acting head of the UN nuclear watchdog in Tehran, Salehi said Iran's rollback in the accordance with the pact. Feruta is in Tehran for high-level talks with Iranian officials, including Foreign Minister Javad Zarif. Meanwhile, France said the path for dialogue with Tehran is open despite its further scaling back from the JCPOA. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said Tehran's actions were negative but not definitive. He said Iran was still several months away from a nuclear bomb. France's President Emmanuel Macron has spoken to Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman via telephone and reiterated two countries' strategic partnership. Measures required to achieve stability and security in the Middle East were also discussed. Crown Prince Salman shared his concerns over the security vessels in the Gulf with the French president. France's diplomatic relations with Tehran have grown substantially over the past 6 months. Earlier, France said it will continue efforts to bring Iran into full compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. French Defense Minister Florence Parly made the comments in a meeting with US Defense Secretary Mark Esper in Paris. Parly said everything must be done to ease tensions with Iran and to ensure safety of navigation. Responding to Iran's plans for uranium enrichment, US Defense Secretary Esper said Tehran has always violated the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action.
I'm not surprised that Iran has announced that it's going to violate the JCPOA. They have been violating it. They had violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty for many years. So it's no surprise that the Iranians are going to pursue what the Iranians have always intended to pursue.
Now, fiery clashes have once again erupted in France as thousands of Yellow Vest protesters look to revive their dying anti-government movement. Police said around 15,000 protesters gathered in the southern city of Montpellier. A police vehicle was set aflame by a firebomb as officers used tear gas to disperse the crowd. 9 protesters were arrested after 7 police officers were injured. Officials blamed 500 hardcore black bloc protesters for the violence. Smaller rallies also took place in Paris, Marseille, Rouen, Lille, Strasbourg, Dijon, Bordeaux and Toulouse. The Yellow Vest movement began last November, triggered by anger over a fuel tax increase. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Moscow has welcomed the prisoner swap between Moscow and Kiev. Spokesperson for the U.S. Embassy, Andrea Callan, says the step is a sign of more robust dialogue and lowering of tensions between Russia and Ukraine. Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe has also praised the prisoner swap carried out by Russia and Ukraine. OSCE says the step will build up confidence between the two countries and will lead to exchange of all detainees as provided in Minsk agreement. The largest prisoner swap between Russia and Ukraine took place yesterday since the 2014 tensions. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky have agreed to improve bilateral relations. Russians are voting for the local elections to choose deputies for the city council in Moscow today. The election came into international limelight after barring of opposition candidates from polls sparked mass protests. Opposition leader Alexei Navalny has urged voters to ignore their ideological beliefs and focus solely on casting the ruling party out of power. For the past 2 months, Moscow has seen one of the biggest sustained waves of protests in Russia as tens of thousands took to the streets. 45 deputies will be appointed from single-member constituencies for the next 5 years. For the first time, the ruling party, United Russia, has not nominated a single candidate for the City Duma elections. United Russia's candidates are presenting themselves as independent, and voters will not be able to differentiate between them. The Federal National Guard Troop Service to say 20,000 officers have been appointed to ensure public order on election day. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, one person has been killed after a 5.9 magnitude earthquake hit China's Sichuan province. State media says 29 others have been injured in the early morning tremor. The government's earthquake monitoring center says the quake's epicenter was in the city of Nejiang. Earlier this week, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake was detected in the South China Sea. Now, all flights and trains in Tokyo have been cancelled as the city braces for typhoon Fazai. The National Weather Agency says the storm is packing winds of over 200 kilometers per hour. 50 bullet train services and 20 flights have been cancelled, while more disruptions are feared. The agency said torrential rain followed by flash floods is expected as the typhoon hits the city. It said Fazai could dump as much as 300 millimeters of rain in the next 24 hours. The agency warned that the weather system can cause severe storms at sea. Hurricane Durian has slammed into Canada's Atlantic coast with heavy rains and powerful winds. The storm has knocked out power for hundreds of thousands of people in the capital of Nova Scotia province. The Met Department said Durian made a landfall in Halifax port with ferocious 100-mile-per-hour winds and torrential rains. Meanwhile, thousands of people were forced to flee after Durian wreaked havoc in the Bahamas. Hundreds of people are missing, while the death toll has already climbed to 43. Relief groups are sending doctors, nurses and medical supplies to the hardest-hit areas. The UN estimates that 70,000 people are in immediate need of life-saving assistance. National Emergency Agency said the evacuations are temporary.
Wish for it to be evacuated completely. Our desire is to get as many people out of the island at this time until we can sanitize the whole area from debris and deceased carcasses of animals and other persons that may be in the community.
The Pan American Health Organization says risk of diarrhea and waterborne diseases is higher on Abaco Island. Now, electric mountain bikes are increasingly popular on hiking trails in the Bavarian Alps, but others are less enthusiastic about this new revolution in cycling. Or in this report.
Robert Werner and his wife Ursula ride their gently whirring e-bikes up trails in the Bavarian Alps. The couple powers up the 800-meter ascent to Hebzogsten summit in half an hour without breaking a sweat. They usually make time to say a friendly hello to hikers, but more often than not, their greetings are met with frowns.
The first thing hikers do is look down at my bike to see if there is a motor or not. With an engine, you don't get much respect in the mountains, but for us, it does not go too badly with the hikers.
Many purists believe exploits into nature should be powered by muesli bars, not the electricity grid. They regard the assisted cycling boom as another high-tech intrusion into the great outdoors. There's the added risk of accidents and environmental hazards.
E-bike riders reach places that could previously only be achieved with great physical effort. That's the problem. There are three elements: the number of people, frequency, and the consequences for the most remote regions of the mountain.
Despite criticism, more and more people are using electric mountain bikes to reach summits. According to a report in 2018, Germans bought nearly 1 million e-bikes, a quarter of them mountain bikes.
The demand is still high. We have almost no competitors and everyone wants to try it, whether it's people on holiday here or people who just want to ride an electric bike.
In a bid to reduce conflict, some Bavarian municipalities are considering setting up areas reserved for cyclists. But Robert recalls a similar debate decades ago when conventional bikes first appeared in the Alps. He adds with a shrug, today no one complains anymore.
The 76th annual Venice Film Festival has wrapped up with some big and unexpected wins. The dark drama Joker has won the coveted Golden Lion Award, pitting it for Oscar recognition. This report has more.
Inspired by Paul Leny's 1928 silent tragic comedy, The Man Who Laughs, The Joker, has become one of the darkest supervillains in Hollywood.
Joker by Todd Phillips.
It was rumored that playing the psycho-sadistic anarchist got to Heath Ledger and ended up killing him. Joaquin Phoenix, who won rave reviews from critics at the festival, plays Batman's nemesis in the film. The story follows his transformation from a vulnerable loner to a chaos-inhibiting maniac. Director Todd Phillips said he took inspiration from 1970s character study movies using somber lighting and dark music.
I mean, this is just all so exciting, the way the movie's been embraced by the Venice Film Festival. This festival has always been known for bold decisions. I think they did that this year with a lot of the movies, and we're just happy that we're one of them. Because we took a really bold swing with the film.
Roman Polanski's military drama, An Officer and a Spy, took the runner-up prize. Festival organizers faced criticism for including Polanski's work due to controversy over his sex crime conviction. They defended the move, saying it was the film, not the man being judged.
We judged the film, and the film was a great piece of cinema, and that's where we start. So I think it's important to remember that, you know, we are all human, and do we forgive, do we continue? It's a complicated situation, but ultimately I think the film in itself was a piece that deserved to be recognized.
The award for Best Screenplay went to Chinese filmmaker Yon Fan for the animation Number 7 Cherry Lane.
I'm very excited because this is the first prize that I get from the International Film Festival, and this is a prize that proves that I can write, because during my 35 years of film career, people they criticize that my script is the lack of drama, but from Venice Film Festival, what can you say?
Italian actor Luca Marinelli won the Best Actor award for Martin Eden. French actress Ariane Ascaride won the Best Actress award for Gloria Mundi. The Silver Lion Award for Best Director went to Sweden's Roy Andersson for About Endlessness. Italian director Franco Maresca won the Special Jury Prize for his satirical documentary film Mafia is No Longer What It Used to Be.
In business stories now, China's imports of US goods has fallen over 22% amid an escalating trade war between the countries. China's Customs Agency published data showing Beijing's exports to Washington sank 16% in August. Meanwhile, China's foreign trade has grown in first 8 months of the year. Statistics show China's foreign trade totaled $2.8 trillion in the corresponding period. A weakening global demand and US-China tariff thefts have battered trade confidence on both sides. Europe's biggest tech fair, IFA 2019, is showcasing a flood of products launched in Berlin. The world's leading trade show for consumer electronics and home appliances will run through September 11th. The event is considered a guide to what products and services will dominate tech stores worldwide in the coming season. Organizers say artificial intelligence, robotics and virtual reality are the focus of the innovation platforms of IFA. 5G data transmission is also a huge topic at the show as retailers hope for brisk Christmas sales. The event is hosting more than 1,800 manufacturers and brands at 2 exhibition locations. Brazil and Argentina have signed a 10-year trade agreement in the automotive sector. Under the deal, the two countries will gradually increase the share of exports to 3 times the imports till 2029. The agreement has been signed by Argentina's Production Minister Dante Sica and Brazil's Economy Minister Paulo Godes. Godes said it will establish a predictable outlook for vehicle and car part companies to attract new investments. Argentina is the main buyer of Brazilian cars and auto parts, but the purchases have been low due to depression in the Argentine economy. The agreement comes ahead of Argentina's elections next month, and it can be run into trouble if Peronist opposition wins. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. Well, with the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.